Over the last 12 months, my wife and I have been working with an architect on the plans for the renovation of our house. So it's been a really emotional roller coaster ride, and one that we've experienced highs, massive highs of exciting, hey, this is how we really want it to be, and then going to council and they go, oh no, we can't do it like that, so you have to rewind and change the whole approach. And eventually we've come to a consensus of what that design is and how it's going to work, and we're actually really super excited to get into that build process with the builder. At least that's where we're at the moment. But how does that apply to designing websites and apps? It's a critical part of the whole process, exactly like what architects do for house design and construction, we do for website and app development, and we call them wireframes. So you've seen me do sketches on paper with boxes and headings and all that sort of thing heaps of times, and you can see a basic wireframe here. What do they look like? Well, they're representations of screens, headers, perhaps big banners here we represent with another box. We might have calls to action, buttons, we might have headers here. So this might be a generic homepage that we would use, but how do we represent this page on mobile, on an iPad, in portrait or landscape? So there's all these other elements that need to be thought about before we go to the developer. If we just went to the developer with just this, then we might have to get the developer to do things 3 or 4 times over because they haven't interpreted what we thought we wanted down the track. So the value of wireframing is it removes mystery. It resolves mystery. It gets all of the stakeholders around the table talking the same language, thinking the same ideas, getting all those ideas down, exactly like with an architect, but on your website project or your app project. Especially in apps and mobile apps, it can be a very, very complex process. We've got small screens to work with. We've got to fit a lot of data potentially into those screens. It's a balance between form versus function. So design, making the sexiness of the design versus how we've got to make this application or website work. So finding that balance is really important, and it's about real estate. What weight do we give to this image when we go across to mobile view? So mobile's very skinny. We've got menu, burger menu pop out here. Our logos are here. Maybe we have to get a call to action above the fold line. So that might be the end of our screen. So we don't have a lot of room to play with. So getting all this down on paper first is a critical part of the process. It really does help remove all that mystery, as I said before. So let's have a look at a few different examples of wireframes that we've done for different projects, and it gives you an idea of the complexity and the flow that we do in that process. I'm going to work through 2 websites, move into a mobile app, and then into a larger web app. So a website example always starts with a sitemap, and you can see here a hierarchied version of that. This particular project is for CBIN, a startup project, which is just awesome, and it's about to be published in the next few months, so we're really, really looking forward to it. You can see this wireframe is actually quite high res. We're using real images and real wording. It looks quite busy, but we're just using real content to give an indication to the designer what the volume of content is going to be like as it's used. So you can see here we get a quiz, we dropped into some sub-pages, standard boxes, content, volume, what images we're going to use. So that's fairly straightforward. That can turn into this, which is the finished art version. So after the wireframes, it moves into finished art with a UI designer, and it just looks awesome. So we're really looking forward to seeing this live very soon. The second example is another website, slider, standard kind of entry points for different user groups. You can see here we're looking at these highlighting different parts of the site to feed users into each of those areas. Again, we've not gone the high fidelity. We're just using lorem ipsum text, dropping in boxes for video examples, form examples where the calls to action are. That turned into this. So you can see the UI designer really brings the wireframes to life. The wireframe is about information weightage and calls to action and function, and then the UI designer overlays a great design over the top. The third example is a mobile app deployed. So you can see here this is a gaming app. So we're looking at designing a fastest flow for a particular action, and you can see here the steps that we've designed in this process to make that work. So here's first screen, user taps bet, user selects the game, user selects the buy-in, user places bet. So within 4 clicks, we can make that happen within the site. So that's can be a lot more complicated in an app to make. We don't have a lot of room to work with, and the wireframes really allow you to plan that in great detail and have the arguments with the development team to set a benchmark for what is important in each screen. That flow is demonstrated in this one particular page. Just to give you an indication of what that looks like from a finished art point of view, we're moving to an app that looks absolutely awesome inside the screen, and compared to the wireframes, it's a fantastic transformation. I love that process. The last but not least is a larger app. Again, this client came to us with a very complicated, highly used, complex application that needed some refinement. The app had been used for many years in larger organisations, so they're looking at simplifying the display of the screens and the workflow, and that turns into this. So yeah, you can see we're giving the indication back to the designer as what's important. So notifications are important here, and that flows through, and this status bar at the top is important. That flows through to the design. The status bar and the notifications are what we really want the user to see. So the takeaway from all this, I guess, is just don't skip the process. Give the design process and wireframing and then finished art process a vested interest in when you're thinking about your project. Don't just jump to, I'm going to choose this template and jam stuff in. It never works in our experience. You end up fighting over different ideas, but if you nut it out on paper, get those wireframes done first, then you end up with a much better experience. I'd love to hear your ideas about and your experience with wireframing. Just put them in the comments below, and yeah, we can start a conversation about what is really important about the wireframing process.